LaxFactor Podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching another episode of the LaxFactor Podcast. We had the Lyme disease episode of 2019, and this is the stomach bug episode of 2020. I was out with a stomach bug, hence me missing yesterday's episode. So today you get to see me fly by the seat of my pants, totally unprepared, which is really just going to show you how much damn college lacrosse that I actually watch. But first, it is time to get that cheddar. And what I wanted to talk about was Sideline Swap. It's one of the best places to buy and sell lacrosse gear. Hands down, you can find hard-to-find college gear. Pretty much once the college season ends, if you go to Sideline Swap, you are going to see all sorts of crazy gear that the D3, D2, and D1 kids are just starting to get rid of. You figure some of these D1 kids end up with 9 helmets before the end of the year, and they're going to put 5 of them up on Sideline Swap. So it's a great place to find actually worn college gear, pre-owned heads, shafts, helmets, and more, all up to 70% off retail. You can list gear collecting dust in your garage. More importantly, if you're a parent, you can actually, kids' gear is expensive, so your kid's going to grow out of helmets. They're going to grow out of gloves, shoulder pads. As your kid is growing, sell their old gear, buy them new gear, so it can help you kind of offset the costs. In the end, stop selling your gear on eBay. It's not the best place. The best place to sell your lacrosse gear specifically is Sideline Swap. Go to sidelineswap.com, or there is a link in the description below that you can hit them up directly. They also have an iOS and Android app. iOS sucks. Use Android, people. And that's it. So now let's get to this. We are going to talk about a boatload of lacrosse today. First game I wanted to talk about, not because I was surprised in the end, but because it does validate, it negates one of my predictions, was that Hopkins was going to beat Towson. I really did, or Loyola. I thought Hopkins was going to put it together. I was hoping that Epstein was going to play, and I figured that Hopkins would end up beating Loyola. Didn't happen. But it validates my point earlier in the season that I said, despite losing Pat Spencer, despite losing their All-American goaltender, despite losing Chase Scanlon to Syracuse, that Loyola was going to remain a top 20 team. And they proved us correct, at least in this game against Hopkins. 10-7. Is the final score, and a couple of things to take away. One, Epstein did start to play this game and was then taken out. I'm not sure exactly how many shifts he played. I did watch it, but it's, you just don't always see every player on the field, every possession. So I know he was out there for a couple of possessions. Might have even only been one possession per someone on one of the video comments, but Epstein is still not ready to go. I believe he's battling a lower leg injury. Some people had even tried to start saying maybe he's got a torn ACL and he's trying to play in a torn ACL. I do not think that it's that. But we have seen people keep torn ACLs secretive with Fields a couple years ago, or last year. Was it last year? Now I can't remember what year Fields graduated. Anyway, I think it was the year before last. So I think it's a lower leg injury, and I think he's legit day-to-day, but why rush him back this early in the season? You don't want to risk this kid's health. You don't want to risk this kid's season if you can get him back game 3, game 4, and have him be totally healthy. He could have also tweaked it. We don't know what happened. The other thing that I think it proves is that Kevin Lindley, I was worried about how is Kevin Lindley going to get the ball? How is Kevin Lindley going to continue to score goals? And he's proving he's going to be able to score goals. He puts up 4 goals in this game. Aiden Olmstead goes 2-1. More importantly, though, offensively for Loyola, you go down the list, they had 3 guys put up 3 points or more. Lindley had 4 goals. Adam Poitras, I don't know how to pronounce that, 2-1, and Olmstead 2-1. And then they had 5 guys that put up 1 point. So they're spreading the ball out. That's excellent. Schaefer in cage for them, for Loyola, 68% save percentage. He had 15 saves against just 7 goals against. And Darby for Hopkins has looked solid so far. 2 games. He's been over 50%, I believe, in both of their games so far. He was not the problem. He went up for 11 saves, 10 goals against. Offensively, that's the problem for Hopkins. Hopkins' defense has actually held up pretty well, considering how horrible they were last week or this weekend against Loyola. On the offensive side of the ball. 4 scorers. Forey Smith, 3-0. I figured Forey Smith would be okay. Evan Zinn looked good for a second week in a row, so that's at least a good sign. Connor DeSimone had a goal. It was just a really bad offensive performance out of Hopkins. Now, this is still not the death note for Hopkins. I think that once they get Epstein back, they're going to just immediately become a much better team. I think everybody would agree with that. But interesting to see how this played out. It was an excellent game. Loyola went balls out. They got an early lead, and they pretty much held on to it. So excellent game, but it does show us that Loyola is legit. Loyola does not need, I mean, granted, everybody would love to have Spencer, but Loyola doesn't need to have Spencer here to have a good season. A lot of people were writing them off totally, thinking they were going to go to the bottom of their conference and maybe not even end up a top 20 team, maybe not contend for playoff spot, but they are 100% going to contend for a playoff spot and for an NCAA tournament bid and all of that good stuff. So that was good to see. Another game I watched, and I think I'm going to cover this next simply because, a lot of people were waiting to see these two teams play, was UAlbany and Cornell. Cornell traveled and played at UAlbany. So that's a good deal for UAlbany this year. They have Cornell at Albany. They have Syracuse at Albany. So that's a pretty big deal. Who else do they have at Albany? Let's look. Because that would be, let's see, they have Syracuse. Maryland is playing at Albany this year. UMass is playing at, oh, no, that's not true. They're at Maryland this year. Let's see. So the Cornell and Syracuse are, Cornell and Syracuse are the big ones, but they do play Maryland. They do play Yale. So their schedule is pretty damn brutal. Anyway, good game for about 8 minutes, 10 minutes or whatnot. Cornell quickly started pulling away. What we learned in this game, Albany is still not very good. It's hard to tell, I guess, because Cornell could just be that good. Cornell's, what are they ranked? 11th or something like that at this stage. Cornell put it on them. Jonathan Donville went for 5 goals. Cooper Telesco for 4. JJ Lombardi, somebody that I wasn't fully familiar with until this game, 3-0. He had a sweet goal where he caught the ball high crease, split 2 defenders with a little bit of a kind of a fake shot into a slight face dodge and went right between him and scored. Piatelli 3-0. What I liked about Piatelli was he carried the ball a little bit, especially in kind of slow break situations where he got the ball at the point and then he just carried right to the middle of the field and scored. So that was good to see out of Piatelli. Teat was 1-4. Connor Fletcher is the X factor for Cornell this year. Connor Fletcher, I think even by his standards, had a down year last year. I expected Fletcher to put up 60 points last year. I think he's that good of a midfielder. I was putting him right below the top midfielders in the country. I was putting him in line with the 3 midfielders on the Syracuse line. The kid's a big boy. He's got a cannon. But he had the sickest feed of the weekend. Maybe I'll roll it right now as I'm saying this, if I can remember to cut it in, where he threw a pass across the field to Telesco, and it looked effortless. So Connor Fletcher, 1-2, not blowing up the world, but he looked good. He looked good as a Dodger and as a shooter. And Erlin looked solid in cage. 10 saves, 10 goals against. Albany struggled. Nanacoke, 2 assists. They did beat Nanacoke up a little bit, though. I heard a lot of people just say that he disappeared. I think Nanacoke did some good things. I think he had a second assist at one point. I forget who scored the goal. It may have been Hogg or Junker, where he got absolutely demolished, gets wrecked by a double team, but got the ball to Patterson, who then threw it back up to the other side. So I think that Nanacoke actually looked a lot better. I think he looked unselfish, which is what they need him to do. He's not this crazy ball carrier that's got enough speed to be able to go to the rack like a Lyle Thompson or something like that and then eat all these double teams and soak all these checks. He can soak checks. He can't get away from them, though. So I think key for Albany is going to be him continuing to be unselfish. I thought he actually looked pretty good. So it's hard to tell with Albany. It could just be that Cornell's that good and Albany may, still be able to win their conference. But I feel like the America East has gotten a little bit tougher at the top now, and Albany may not be back to there yet. But upstate New York teams, me being from upstate, I like to see Cornell, Albany. I like to see them all do well, except when they play Syracuse. And that was good to see. Ended up being a good game, though. Cornell 19-10. And it was entertaining. A lot of cool goals. Cornell defensively looked solid. At the face-off X, Cornell looked solid. That was one of their problems last year, so they shored that up. Or once again, maybe Albany's face-off guy just stinks. We don't know. So we're going to see. But Cornell starts the season out 1-0, and that was good to see from them. I think really the most exciting game of the weekend, one of the biggest games of the weekend, Maryland and Penn. And this is another one of those games where I turned it off. I don't remember if I turned it off or if I flicked over to another game, but at one point Maryland was down 11-6, 11-7, and Penn looked like they had a ton of momentum. And I'm thinking, oh man, Maryland is going to get beat up. And then I was kind of upset because I had picked Maryland to win this game by 3 goals via my lines from last week. And I see that we're going, I'm trying to go toe to toe with at what is it? Lax Vegas lines or whatever they are. I suspect they're putting their lines together and maybe they've got some kind of computer algorithm going head to head. And I'm just, using my dome here. I am going to bring somebody else in to help me put the lines together though, to see if we can, a little more back and forth will dial us in. But I didn't get smoked by him too badly the first week and I haven't run the numbers yet this week. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, what we learned about Maryland this weekend is all of the people who keep saying Maryland's overrated, Mike Rothstein, they're not. They're not overrated. I mean, Penn is a really solid lacrosse team. Sean Lully, 4 goals, 2 assists. Handley, 3-2. I mean, Adam Goldner, 2-2. Gerger, I forget how to pronounce the Dylan Gergar's name, but he was 3-2. So Penn is a solid lacrosse team. Penn came out on fire. And Maryland comes back from deep down in the clutches of hell and beats them 17-15. One thing, I brought it up on my phone here, it was an interesting stat here, is Patrick Birkinshaw, the Virginia transfer goalkeeper that saved Virginia's ass against Princeton last year. Without Birkinshaw in cage against Princeton, they lose that game, hands down. Where the hell are my stats here that I wanted to bring up? And he ended up having 9 saves versus 17 goals against. But more importantly, here it is. He had, of course, this is going to load super slow here while I'm doing this. And it's going to load the wrong thing as well. Well, either way, I forget what it was, but I'm pretty sure he had 7 of his saves in the first half and only 2 saves across the entire second half. And I'm not pretty sure. That's actually the stat. I'm positive of that. And Chris Brandow for Maryland was the exact opposite. He put up the bulk of his saves. Let me go to the team stats here. Birkinshaw put up the bulk of his saves in the first half, 2 in the second half. And Brandow put up, come on, where are your saves, fools? Of course, it's just not going to work out for me. Okay, here we go. Yeah, Brandow, 6 saves in the first half and 13 saves in the second half. So Brandow, Maryland loses this game last year. Maryland did not have the goaltending that would have been required to help them launch this comeback. Brandow hasn't been spectacular, but he has been solid in cage for them, and this proves that he's for real and that he's the right goalie for Maryland right now, because when they needed him to make saves in that second half against a high-powered Penn offense, he made those saves. So that ended up being huge. I think that was one of the game changers. Dylan Maltz for Maryland, 5 goals. Jared Bernhardt, 4-2. DeMayo, 3-1. Wisnowskis, 1-3. The usual suspects all ended up showing up for Maryland. And like I said, Birkinshaw did not show up for Penn in the second half. That's the difference in that game for the most part. I saw that one thing that I was surprised with Penn, they being their first game out and being Maryland's third game, I was surprised to see Penn clear the ball perfectly. They didn't fail a single clear. That was and then one thing that was also interesting stat-wise was that Maryland turned the ball over a boatload in the second half during their comeback. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe Maryland plays tight. They have a hard time. Maryland tries to be too careful with the ball. Maybe they have a hard time. Maryland opens it up a little bit, plays fast and loose. They start scoring goals and getting crazy, because that seems to be what happened. We'll maybe look into this game a little bit later this week, and maybe we'll do a deeper dive into the statistics and what it tells us. But that was a ridiculously good game, and Maryland is not overrated, people. Maryland has earned their spot, and we may end up seeing them climb in the rankings a little bit more before long, simply because their schedule is brutal, and they're always going to play a team worthy of their experience. Another good game this weekend that a lot of people were hyped for, and I was too, and it's another game that I got wrong, was Hofstra and Michigan. I thought Michigan was going to have a little bit more depth. I thought Michigan was just going to be a little bit more ready to go in this game, and Michigan loses to Hofstra 12-9. The main thing we learned in this game, Clay and Buchanavich for Michigan, they're both solid, 3-0, 2-1, respectively. Zawada showed again, 2-0 for Michigan. But Ryan Tierney is the man. Ryan Tierney, I knew Ryan Tierney was good. Everybody knows Ryan Tierney is a good lacrosse player. He had a pass similar to Connor Fletcher's where he threw that thing on a rope across the field. I think it was to McIntosh. Just a disgusting feed, but Tierney dominated this game. He goes 4-4 on the day, 8 points. Ryan Sheridan, 3 goals. Dylan McIntosh, 2 goals. So Hofstra's offense is as good as advertised. They, granted, Michigan is not at the top of the Big Ten by any means, but it is a big conference team. It is a big school with a lot of money. And Hofstra, not a big school with a lot of money, but definitely a school with a ton of lacrosse tradition. And to see Ryan Tierney trash on them, Ryan Tierney will be in the conversation for the Tewaaraton come the end of the season, I believe. I don't know that he'll end up being a finalist, but he is definitely going to be in the conversation and in the hunt all season long. So that was a good game, and I got that one wrong. I'm happy to admit when I get things wrong for sure. Another crazy outcome, not a great game, but another crazy and very telling outcome is Army and Rutgers. And Army is kind of putting the whole country on notice here for the most part. Army is now 3-0, and they have been beating teams up. And what we knew coming into the season was we knew Army's offense was going to be loaded. They just got way too many guys back, and it was obvious that they were going to be able to put up points. What I was worried was losing Beretta, losing some defenders. I was worried that was going to hurt them and that defensively they were going to struggle. That has been the opposite of the case. Their defense legitimately almost looks better thus far than they were last year with an All-American in cage and an All-American on defense. You know, they had the best goalie in the country, arguably, or one of the best goalies in the country, and then one of the best defenders in the country. And what's been interesting to see is that their defense has put really good teams on lock. They held UMass, I think, to 4 goals, and UMass is legit. They just beat Ohio State this weekend. Rutgers had put up a ton of points so far this season sitting at 2-1 now that Army beat them, and Rutgers only puts up 4 goals. A 15-4 spread against Rutgers is proving that your team is solid. And offensively, Jacob Morin, 5 goals, Sean O'Brien, 3-1, Gunnar Phillip, 2-0. Nick Turn was quiet, but he still had 3 assists on the day. And this goalie, Wyatt Schupler, is legit. Right now, he has got to be on pace to set records. The kid had 16 saves versus just 2 goals against. The other 2 goals came against the backup that spelled him after the route was on. So if this kid can keep playing like this, not only will he end up being an All-American as a freshman, he's on pace, and he's playing good teams so far. This kid's on pace to set records with the save percentage that he has so far. Let's take a quick look at what he's done so far. 3 games so far. These 3 games were against UMass, a very solid lacrosse team, just beat Ohio State. New Jersey Tech, they're not great. They're terrible. And Rutgers, 2-1 teams. So two teams with winning records so far. And this kid has 31 saves, just 6 goals against with an 84% save percentage. But then you go down the list. The first backup has a 67% save percentage, and the other 2 guys are both at 100%. So I was actually talking to Beretto's dad last night in a Facebook forum and a Facebook group, and he was saying that our Army's goalies are always a really tight-knit group of people. He said that Beretto played with just really solid kids. He just happened to be the kid that got to start through his career, but all of those goalies there that are good, that Albarisi just knows how to pick goalkeepers. I'd posit that he knows how to train up and develop goalkeepers, because Army always has a solid defense, and more importantly, they always have solid goalkeepers. It could just be the Army kids are just crazy enough to always be sick in the cage, because it requires a special kind of crazy to be a goalkeeper at the Division I level. But man, watch this Wyatt Schupler kid, 84% after 3 games, with 2 of those teams being known solid quantities. So that was good to see for Army. And what else we got here? We're going to talk about North Carolina beating up on Lafayette. Now listen, man, North Carolina hasn't played a whole lot yet, and they're going to get tested, I believe, in this upcoming weekend. This weekend against Lafayette, who's 0-3, 24-8. So they are putting up a ton of points, but they're beating up on teams that are lower level. Trippy 4-1, Cook 4-0, Chris Gray 3-4. So he just continues his dominance. Nikki Solomon, good to see again, 2-5. Brendan Cameron 2-2. Justin Anderson 2-2. North Carolina is truly going to be a pick your poison team. Yes, that was Lafayette, but it does not matter who they will play. You take away Nikki Solomon, Chris Gray is going to torch you. You take away Solomon and Gray, Trippy, Cameron, Anderson, all of these guys can dodge. All of these guys can feed. North Carolina is a solid team, and it will be scary to see. Caton Johnson hasn't been as good as I expected in cage so far this season. But that'll be just sometimes you play down when you're playing bad teams and you get big leads and things like that. His save percentage so far this season is 57%, so that's not terrible. But they played Colgate, Mercer, and Lafayette. This weekend, we get to see how good they really are. They play Hopkins. If Epstein's back, I expect this to be a battle. If Epstein is not back, who knows? They could possibly beat up Hopkins because, granted, Hopkins has been okay on defense, but offensively, not so much. And that's going to be it. In tomorrow's show, we are going to talk about other games from the weekend that took place here. My stupid browser is freezing up on me here. I was going to talk a little bit about Bucknell and Sacred Heart. We're going to talk about the Syracuse game. We're going to talk about Villanova-Yale over the weekend. So come back tomorrow and we'll talk about a bunch more games that we didn't get to. Virginia-Lehigh. So tomorrow's show, we're going to talk about a bunch more games from the weekend, from this prior weekend, and then come back Thursday and we'll preview all of the games that are interesting to me, at least, for the following weekend. As always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, link in the description to visit our new sponsor, Sideline Swap. And as always, you can go to LaxFactor.com to support the channel. Beyond that, you can buy yourself gear, hats, t-shirts, shirts, polos, mugs, all of that good stuff, LaxFactor.com. And that is it. Thank you. This was the stomach bug episode of 2020. Tomorrow I should be a little bit more on point because I will not still be recovering from a stomach bug that resulted in me losing 4 pounds. Woohoo! It's like I got a colonic or something like that. I'm sure you all wanted to know that. So that is it. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow.